guys, it's Destiny back again with another video. And is this camera straight? Okay. And today I wanted to share my birth story. I don't think I've ever really shared my birth story with anyone other than the people that were there. My mom, my sister. And I think that, you know, it's important that as women we share our stories. Share what you're comfortable with, of course. Use discretion. But yeah, and as I mentioned in my previous video, I had 2 C-sections, and I will tell you that was not my plan for either birth. My plan was to have a natural, maybe the first son I wasn't also natural, but my plan was to have vaginal births. And they both ended up being cesareans. So with son number 1, I had just turned 20, and from, you know, doctor's appointments and measurements, they were thinking that he was going to be early. So that was the mind frame, like, oh, he's going to be early, he's going to come, we don't know when he's going to come, blah blah blah. No, he didn't come on his due date, which due dates change all the time based on the growth of the baby, really, and whatever other factors that may come into play, but due dates do change. And since he didn't come on that expected due date, they decided to say he was late. And I'm like, how is he late just because he didn't come when you wanted him to come? But whatever, I'm young, new mom situation, I'm just going with what the doctor is saying. And so when he didn't come on that day, they said, if he doesn't come in 3 days, we're going to induce you. And I was like, induce? What is induce? How do you induce somebody? You know, I didn't know what that meant. I was just like, okay, they're just gonna make my baby come, or I'm just gonna be in the hospital until he comes. So ended up being, I was scheduled to be at the hospital at 12 o'clock midnight. Getting there was ridiculous. We got pulled over. My mom was driving. Her tail light was out. Police is like, oh, your car fits the description. And my mom was like, she's about to have a baby. Like, she's about to have a baby. And then the police shines the light. Oh, wow, she is. Go, go, go. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was nerve-wracking. So we get all up in the room and get situated and stuff. And because obviously I'm not in labor, they have to make labor happen. So what they used for me was Pitocin. Pitocin is the devil, okay? I would not recommend Pitocin for any mom who is being induced. If there's an alternative, see if you could get that alternative. Pitocin is no joke. Like, don't do it. But they gave me Pitocin. I didn't know. So it basically just like, it's like a jump. It jump starts your body into labor, and then the contractions start coming on. And to me, because it's forced, the contractions are way worse than what they would be naturally. And so it was just awful. And then they try to tell you, oh, get some rest, while you got this Pitocin pumping, increasing the contractions, basically making your womb do something it's not ready to do, okay? And so long kept going, not much. There was a little activity. I started to dilate some, but it was slow. Again, Pitocin can kind of slow your labor as well. So I wasn't dilating as much as they expected. Like, I came in 2 centimeters dilated already. That's another reason why they thought he was gonna come early, because my body was like preparing, but it wasn't totally ready yet. So after a while, they ended up breaking my water, which was an experience, because I'm like, what? You're gonna go in and break my water? And that is what they did. And I couldn't even handle that, because I'm like, what in the world? And then kept going, still not much on the dilating spectrum. I can't remember what I ultimately got dilated to at this point, but it wasn't much. And all I know is I was asleep at this point. I finally was able to get some rest, and I'm not even joking, it was like a freaking movie. Like 10 doctors, nurses, doctors, assistants, 10 of them jokers came running into my room, pulling on stuff, doing this, and I'm like woken up at this point. I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, the baby stopped breathing for 2 minutes. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So they're doing all this, and I'm like, what? He stopped breathing? I'm freaking out now because they're freaking out. And then my doctor finally comes in, and he's like, okay, so this is the situation. Your baby stopped breathing. This isn't a safe environment for him, talking about my womb. So we're gonna have to, it's recommended that we do a C-section, or you or the baby might not live. I'm like, what? What? Like, hold up. Y'all injected me with this to try to make this happen, and because it's not going the way you want, now what? My life is at risk, his life is at risk. I was freaking out, I was crying, I was like, I don't know what to do. I didn't want it to be this way. I didn't want to have a C-section. I want to have a regular birth. Like, I was going on and on. And then I was like, well, just do whatever is going to be safe for the baby, like just whatever. And so they're like, all right, we're gonna go get you prepped for a C-section and the epidural and all that stuff. Oh my god, I freaked out because, you know, when you're pregnant, you read online about different stories and you read different things that people go through, and it's like, epidural, like that's into my spine. It's supposed to numb you, you know, waist down. And I'm like, what if I'm paralyzed? It was just a lot. Mind you, I was 20 years old, obviously never given birth before, so that was a lot. So I ended up going back for the C-section, and I just remember, you know, having the anesthesia and just feeling so much pressure on my chest. I was like, oh my god. And my doctor they were having a regular conversation, like how you see on Grey's Anatomy, how they just be talking about regular stuff. He was calling somebody the B word. I'm like, he's operating on me, cussing, talking about somebody else. Like, what in the actual world? It was like crazy. And so then, you know, the procedure went on. They pulled the baby out, and he was alert, looking around. I'm like, what? He's already up and looking. And I was like, go check his fingers and toes, make sure he has everything, make sure everything's okay. And by the grace of God, he was, and he was a perfect little baby. And then, you know, they sewed me on up and went to recovery. When I woke up, I felt like my stomach was flat. I was like, where's my stomach? What happened? And they're like, it's not, it's still there. But with that experience, I ended up having to be in the hospital for like 5 days total. Normal cesareans are like 2 to 3 days in the hospital, but I had to stay 5 because my blood pressure was too low. I didn't know anything what was going on after I gave birth. All I know is that I got this baby, I got this pain, I gotta make it work, you know what I'm saying? So that's how that went. Birth 1, okay, birth 2, 9 years later. 9 years later. With my doctor, I had already expressed to her that I wanted to do a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after cesarean, which is possible. So if there's any moms out there that have had a C-section previously and you want to try your next birth vaginally, you can do it. It is possible. The same risk that you would have giving birth vaginally is the same risk that you would have having a VBAC. So don't let no one discourage you or tell you otherwise, okay? Because my first doctor with the first baby, he told me that after having that first C-section, all my babies were gonna have to be C-section. And I was like, what? That is crazy. But it's not true. So with baby number 2, my intentions and my plan, which you have to have intentions, you have to have a plan, but you have to know that plans change. The plan and the intention was to have a VBAC, and my doctor was full on support of that. She's one of the best doctors in the area. I was so blessed to be able to have her. She was really a great doctor. All through my checkups and everything, she was just really good. But this story, since I never had my water never had my water break on its own, that was my fear. I don't want my water to break when I'm out and about at the store, when I'm at work, when I'm hanging out. You know, I didn't want my water to break, because you see the movies and it's like, oh my God. So Monday morning, I'm at work. Feels different, my body. You feel a lot of pressure, a lot of discomfort, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I just don't feel the best. At this point, my schedule was different, so I was leaving early anyway, based on being pregnant and so close to my due date. So all I remember is I got up for something. I think I was just trying to stretch because I was just so discomforted. Stood up, just like the damn movies. Water everywhere. I'm like, what? And I'm like in shock at this point. I'm like, okay. So I start waddling towards the door, and before I leave, I turn to my coworker and I'm like, I think my water just broke. So I'm waddling down the hallway to the bathroom because I don't know, did I pee on myself? Did my water break? Am I bleeding? Like, what is happening? What is this? So I call my doctor. I'm like, I just stood up and a whole bunch of water just came out of nowhere. Is that normal? They're like, you're in labor. You need to get here ASAP. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm freaking out. I'm calling my mom. She's not answering. She's a school teacher. So she was in class and they couldn't reach her from whatever. So I'm calling my sister, who's out of state. Can you call mom? Because my water just broke. I don't know what to do. I need to get to the hospital. Is there anyone that can take me? I don't know if I can drive. Like, full on. I won't say dramatic because it was a real situation, okay? But it was full on. And so I get back to my desk at work, and everyone comes around. They're surrounding me. They're like, oh my God, this is so exciting. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. You're excited, but I'm freaking out. And so I was trying to get a hold of my aunt because she's in the area, and I'm like, my water just broke at work. Is there any way that you can come and take me to the hospital and blah blah blah? And so she's like, oh my God, I'm on my way. So as I'm waiting for my aunt to come, I'm still working. Like, I'm sending out emails because my whole thing was like, I don't want them to think because I'm pregnant and a black girl that I'm slacking and I don't have everything prepared for when I'm going to be on maternity leave. So I'm still sending emails. I'm still doing things. And they're like, Destiny, you're sending emails while you're in labor? Stop it. Get off the computer. So I finally got off the computer, and then my supervisor, she's like, I'm gonna go get a wheelchair and we're gonna wheel you down for when your aunt's coming. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so dramatic. I don't want everybody to see me like this. I don't want all this extra stuff. Like, it was just a lot. And so as she was wheeling me out, all my coworkers were like in a circle around me, like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's gonna be beautiful. You're gonna have a great labor and delivery and recovery. Like, they're doing all the things. And I was just like crying because I'm like, am I about to die? That's how they're acting. Honey, I was freaking out. I was bawling. And then my aunt finally came and we went to the hospital, and she's like, you know, because there was some speed bumps in my parking lot. She's like, oh, hold on for this. And so it was just uncomfortable. And then I'm like, oh my God, who's going to pick up my son from school? And I'm like, can you pick up my son? And she was like, of course. And then so, you know, we get into the hospital room. I get set up and stuff like that, and the nurse puts the freaking IV, like the thing to be ready, and I'm like, this don't feel right. And she's like, oh yeah, because you're not used to it, it's gonna feel discomfort. At the end, I realized that my vein was ruptured. She did not do the IV right. So if you're in the hospital and something doesn't feel right, speak up. tell them, no, this is not right. This is not okay. It's not because I've never experienced it before. It's not right. Okay. So we're in the hospital. We're going. Labor's progressing. I'm having freaking contractions. I'm like, oh my God. And my son, he's there because he could see the lines, whatever they're called, to measure the contractions. And he's like, oh, it's about to be a big one. I'm like, yeah, it is. It is a big one. So we do that all night. No action. We do that the next day. No real action. I mean, I got up until 8 centimeters dilated, but then I stayed there and nothing happened. And so they were afraid that because I had gotten like a fever. So they were afraid that I was at risk for infection and that the baby would be at risk for infection. And I think I had Pitocin too, because they were trying to keep it going because my labor kind of like stagnated. And then my doctor, she was somewhere else, but she called in. She's like, you know, we're trying to do this vaginally, but we're not getting much progress. It's a day and a half already of labor. We're gonna have to do a C-section if nothing happens in 20 minutes. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm crying because I'm like, this is not what I wanted to do. This was not our plan. I reminded her this was not our plan. But I ended up having to have a C-section again because labor didn't progress basically at the speed that they wanted it to. Ultimately, so went back again. It was drama because my son was there and my mom was gonna go back with me. I'm like, who's gonna watch him? So my aunt, who worked at the hospital, had to come get him. Went back for the C-section, and I just kept telling the anesthesiologist, don't let me die on this table. Do not let me die. I said, I feel tired, I feel weak, I don't have any energy, like I have nothing in me. And she's like, it's okay, you just had a day and a half of labor, you're gonna feel weak, you're gonna feel tired, you're not gonna die. And I said, you don't understand, I cannot die. I have a son and I got this baby. Don't let me die. Like I kept saying that. And the hospital I gave birth at is like a learning hospital, so they have the residents come in with the doctors. And she was like, why does she keep saying don't let her die? Why does she think she's gonna die? And my doctor was like, because minorities, particularly black women, have a higher rate of death giving birth than all other races. And so she is concerned that that might happen to her. And this is something that my doctor and I spoke about because I don't want to die. And so she was like, oh, okay, I understand. So the whole time I'm like, don't let me die, don't let me die. My mom is there and they have the mirror thing so she could see what's happening. I can't clearly, but she's like, oh my God, what? Oh, Des, you should see this. Really, Mom? I should see this while I'm being operated on? I should see. Okay. She'd never seen it before, so she was like, oh my God, so amazed. And then when the baby came up, they held him up, showed alert, and I'm like, okay, but he's not crying. Why isn't he crying? And so they rush him over to the little table over there. And I'm like, why isn't he crying? Why isn't my baby crying? What's going on? Like, I'm going off, freaking out. I'm like, Mom, go see what's going on. She goes over there. Then he starts to cry. And I'm like, okay, oh my God. And then they're like, oh, he's a little jaundiced. I'm like, jaundiced? He's not jaundiced. And then they're like, we're going to have to take him to the NICU and all these other things. Then I'm bawling again. I'm like, oh my God, my baby. But whatever happened, they didn't have to take him to the NICU and he wasn't jaundiced. Don't let these people play with you. So, again, I was in hospital for 5 days. Similar situation because I had like a fever, infection, low blood pressure, but my blood pressure is always lower than whatever their standard is. It has always been with all my checkups. When I was pregnant, it was always lower than whatever their standard was. So that was automatic. But I was in there for 5 days. And then that Saturday morning I was able to leave and come home with my baby. But birth and pregnancy is a beautiful thing, as dramatic and possibly traumatic as this may have sound, it was all worth it. My boys are beautiful and healthy. They're strong. They are intelligent. They're good little boys. Like, it's amazing. It was worth everything that I went through. And I'm just so thankful that, especially with my last doctor, that she really listened to me and let me, for as much as I could, be in control of certain things. I still think that I could have gone longer in labor, because their initial thought was that I probably went into labor Sunday, and I probably did, and I just didn't realize it. And then that's why Monday my water just broke like that. So I was probably really, all in all, in labor for 3 days. Well, yeah, 2.5, 3 days. And so that was their concern. And in those moments, I didn't see that. I didn't care. I just knew that y'all did Serena wrong. Y'all did Beyonce. Like, if y'all can do these huge named celebrities wrong, you could do me wrong. And I didn't want that. So that was really my concern. But all in all, it was a beautiful thing. Like, at the end of the day, it was. Would I do things differently? I would. I would probably try to have like a midwife and a doula and do a home birth. Not a fan of hospitals, but it happened the way that it happened. Can't go back and change it. I'm thankful again for the doctors and the nurses that were there and to comfort me, and the anesthesiologist. I love her. But so yeah, that was my birth story with both boys. C-sections, drama, emergency, crying non-stop, just a lot of stuff going on, which is expected. You know, the emotions when you're going through these major life changes. Having a baby is a major life change. Having a major surgery is a major life change. So that's it on my birth story. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. You know, feel free to share and like this video. Share it with other moms who may be expecting, who have had C-sections, or who nurses or people who are interested in black women that have had birth. I don't know. But yeah, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe and hit the post notification bell so that you'll be notified every time I do uploads. And if you love someone, tell them. I love you all.